Today, we're focusing on the most vulnerable and transformative time for a new family, the fourth trimester. You've prepared for birth, but what happens after you bring baby home? How do you find balance, confidence, and rest in those first few months? Today, I'm having a conversation with Kelly Settipani, who is a newborn care specialist, and we dive into the different options that parents have dealing with childcare and support for families. And we're talking about what it is that you might need so that you can understand how to get the support you need in this newborn season and minimize the overwhelm that may come with a growing family and have compassionate care and receive practical advice. Let's dive in. In our most sleep deprived moments, our children will teach us exactly what we need in order to learn and grow into who we were created to be. These are the loving lessons we will learn whether we were wanting to or not. I'm Irene Googe, your sleep coach, and I'm on mission to educate parents on how to help their young children sleep. Welcome to the journey. Hello, and welcome to the Loving Lessons Learned podcast. I am here with Kelly Settipani, who is a dedicated infant care professional. Over the last decade, she has been assisting families as a professional nanny and has her credentials as in the International Nanny Association and as a newborn care specialist. Over the last 3 years, Kelly has focused helping families through the transition of adding a newborn to their family through in-home care and support, lactation support, personalized consultations, and new parent classes. Kelly is able to ease the anxiety that new parents face and help them thrive in that fourth trimester. Kelly, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into all of this work with the newborn in this fourth trimester.
Well, I feel like I've been passionate about childcare pretty much in helping families my entire life, starting just even as a child myself, helping my mom in the nursery at church and things such as that. And it progressed into becoming a nanny for most of my career previously. I was nannying and kind of seeing a need for parents as they're welcoming a baby and felt like that's really where a lot of my strengths were. One of my strengths is really recognizing those subtle cues that newborns give off that a lot of times are overlooked. And so as I was nannying, I was doing my research to kind of figure out how I could best help families during that time period of adding an infant to the family, and came across newborn care specialist training and decided to pursue that. So started my business in 2021, jumped right in with providing overnight support for families. Through that overnight support, I really recognized the importance of staying up to date on everything in the newborn care field and also diversifying so that I could help more families. Because when I'm working as a newborn care specialist, I'm focused on one family at a time. And I really want to be able to help more families. So I continued with my trainings and became a certified new parent educator as well, so that I can offer classes, personalized classes, group classes, really anything in between with consults as well. I also pursued the lactation training so that I could best serve those families that I'm working with, because a lot of families were struggling with lactation issues. So that's really kind of how it got started and how it's going now.
Awesome. And Kelly, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what is the difference between like a postpartum doula and a newborn care specialist? Because that was something that you and I had talked about. And I was like, oh, like I had never really thought about it. And again, I think sometimes as we dive into professional development and classes, we learn so much. So I'm wondering if you can kind of help parents understand that.
Yes, definitely. So there are a lot of similarities, and a lot of times they get kind of confused a little bit. And to be honest, a lot of newborn care specialists like myself are also certified postpartum doulas, so we can kind of mesh those roles a little bit. But the big difference is that postpartum doulas a lot of times are described as mothering the mother. So you're really there for that support of the mom, support of the whole family. And so they postpartum doulas have a lot of infant and newborn knowledge, but it's not quite as in depth as what I got from my newborn care specialist training. So the focus is kind of on helping the mom adjust, doing some chores around the house sometimes, such as meal prep, laundry, things like that. A lot of times it's postpartum doula work started as more of daytime assistance helping the mom versus overnight support, although a lot of times postpartum doulas also do overnight support. Whereas with my newborn care specialist training, it just goes really in depth on how to take care of the baby. And as a newborn care specialist, I can take full charge care of the baby if needed and do anything that that baby needs. I also offer a lot of instruction on what to expect with a newborn. As I'm not a medical professional, so I can't diagnose, but I can recognize symptoms and kind of prepare parents with questions to ask the pediatrician, give them the heads up of things that I'm seeing so they're not surprised when they go into the pediatrician if the pediatrician mentions it. I'm also able to really help get that baby in a routine. So getting them on a feeding routine and a sleep routine gently is one of the things that I do as well. So it's really just my focus is a lot on the newborn while also supporting the parents and the family. So I still offer parent support, but my focus is more on that care of the newborn and helping them in that way.
And Kelly, you're speaking my love language, talking about feeding and sleeping routines. Cause you and I, we've talked about this and we know the importance of that. I wonder what you would share with parents to notice or what they should be listening for when you're talking about those subtle cues that their children are picking up on. What are the things that you've learned or that you educate families on?
Yes. Yes. So, I mean, in those early weeks with the feeding cues, a lot of times they are just moving their mouth around a lot more, sticking that tongue out, trying to get their hands in their mouth for those feeding cues. And that does shift over time. But in those early weeks, it can be a little difficult to determine whether it's a hunger cue or whether it's just, I need to suck, because babies do have that suck reflex that's pretty strong. And sometimes they do just want comfort sucking as well. But I pick up on each individual baby because they're all different. And kind of when I'm working with them, I make notes of what I'm seeing with that particular baby that is their cue because sometimes it can vary a little bit from baby to baby. So I can say, okay, this one, if they haven't eaten in an hour and they start doing that, they definitely are ready to eat versus they just want the pacifier for a few seconds, to kind of calm that reflex. And for sleep, a lot of times this is where it's they're missed the most, and that is baby kind of gazing off into space, not wanting to look you in the face a lot of times when they're getting overstimulated and overtired. Their little eyebrows will turn red sometimes, so I'll notice that. That's usually kind of later in the game. Once you get to that and the yawning and the crying, you've missed a lot of those early signs. But a lot of times they just get a lot more fidgety as well when they're starting to get tired. But it's not purposeful seeming. It's kind of that random jerky movement. So a lot of times that's what I start to notice with the babies is just kind of that glassy eyed stare, more involuntary movements, that type of thing.
Yes. I think that's a big piece where, a newborn care specialist or postpartum doula can really help parents kind of navigate what does that look like? What is my baby
Yes.
communicating? Because I know personally in my journey, I had no idea. I had no idea my child was communicating to me like, oh, I'm ready to go to sleep and all, or
Yes.
I need to eat. And so I think sometimes understanding that can be really helpful for
Yeah.
parents. And so that's a good place to start and having
Yeah.
some of that support in these
Yeah.
early weeks.
And that's where the logging really helps, I feel like, because, if I'm working, especially with a first time parent, some of my seasoned parents, they don't need they're not expecting as many notes. But if I'm working with a first time parent who wants a lot of notes, then I try to note down everything that I see so that when they're with their baby, they have that heads up of, okay, this means that. I mean, I worked with a good example is I worked with a slightly older infant, still, I would say he was probably around 3 or 4 months of age, and he would always giggle when he would start to get tired. So it was like, and his parents expressed to me, yes, like we didn't realize that the giggling was a sign that he was getting tired. But if you pick him up when he giggles and go down for a nap, it goes so much better. So
Yeah.
picking up on those little things and being able to tell them that so that they have success when I'm not there as well is very important to me, because I want to set them up for success when I'm not there too.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that that's a really valid point because, like, it's so unique to every single child and how they are like soothing and settling themselves. And again, like, that is where my brain geeks out all of the time because I'm just like, wow, like, look at how sweet that is. But again, sometimes we get so busy in the day to day. And I love
Yes.
the fact that you encourage a log and you can share that because it gives us good information along
Yes.
the way. So, Kelly, I'm wondering what questions would you encourage parents to ask when they're interviewing a professional? Like if they're trying to figure out, do I need a postpartum doula, a newborn care specialist, a lactation consultant? And now, are you a IBCLC? Can you clarify?
I I'm a CLC, which is a step down. So I'm just a certified lactation counselor versus an international board certified lactation counselor. So it's less hours put in. A lot of times, there are pathways to be an IBCLC if you're not a nurse, but a lot of times IBCLCs are nurses that pursue that, and you have to have a lot more hours. So I did the CLC because it is pretty in depth, gives a lot of knowledge. I practice as a CLC mostly helping the families that I'm already helping, because if there's difficulties that arise outside of just kind of the basic, I will refer out to an IBS CLC because they have more experience with that. So that's a little bit of the difference. It's just a little bit lower level of
Yeah,
lactation counselor. So I do education and setting up for success and helping with little minor hiccups in the road, but anything more difficult, I'll refer out.
awesome. And so, what questions would
Yes.
you encourage parents to ask as
Yeah.
they're navigating like support for
I
them?
think a lot of it is asking themselves what they're looking for first, like how much
Mm,
newborn care they want versus parent support and those other things like the meal prep and the laundry. I do as a newborn care specialist, I do baby laundry and I wash baby bottles and pump parts and all that thing, but because I'm primarily working overnight, I'm not doing a lot of other little tasks around the house. So if that's more what you're looking for, then you're probably looking more for a postpartum doula and day support. And if you're looking for someone, I like to use the example. I work with parents that are going to be stay-at-home parents or parents that are career professionals. But a lot of times, those that have kind of a deadline of they're going back from maternity leave, their priority is really getting that baby on as good of a routine as possible before going back to work. And so a lot of times they're the ones that seek out that newborn care specialist, because of that extra training and ability to help them do that. So then when they're asking questions of the newborn care specialist or postpartum doula, my suggestion is to do a little bit of research on the certifying agencies and find the ones that kind of connect with you. So that's whether you're looking for a postpartum doula or a newborn care specialist. For newborn care specialists, it's not really a super regulated industry. So I am an International Nanny Association credentialed NCS. Um, and that requires you to take a proctored exam that's pretty in depth. It was quite a long test. I studied for it for a long time. And then there are two major certifying agencies that are recognized as being the big certifying agencies, and that's CASH certification. And that requires training from one of their approved training places, plus hours of working with newborns that are verifiable, and references from families. And then the Newborn Care Specialist Association is fairly new, and they have different levels of certification as well, and it requires training from an approved place, hours working with babies. I believe they require a test as well, and things like that. So you kind of look and see what the requirements are and how you feel about that. I feel like because different people have different priorities when they're looking for care. And then with postpartum doula, if you go and look at some of the major certifying agencies, I'm a pro doula certified. There's also Kappa and DONA are very well known. And if you go and look at their mission statements and philosophies and kind of find what aligns with what you feel comfortable with, I think that helps you in asking those questions of the person you're interviewing. So you make sure that y'all are aligned on your priorities and philosophies. And past that, I definitely ask for certifications, where you're certified, or if you're certified, how much experience you do have, because you may be looking for someone. Different parents have different priorities. Some are okay with someone with less experience, and some want someone with more experience. So knowing where someone falls on that can really be beneficial to kind of know what you're getting. Because as much experience as I had when I was new, it still doesn't compare to the experience that I have now, just
Sure.
because of the amount of times I've done it. So
Yeah.
I look for CPR certification as well. And then looking at those references, I have testimonials to kind of pick out what those things are that are important to you. Like I know a lot of the families talk about that I log very well, and that's very helpful for them. If that's not something that's as important to you, if you want something different, kind of picking that out. Past that, honestly, it's a lot about fit and personality and just having a conversation to make sure that you align personality wise, because this person is working inside your house
Yeah.
and you need to get along with them and you need to trust them because they're caring for your precious little baby. So if you don't feel a connection with them, then it's not as likely to go as well. So a lot of times when I'm interviewing with parents, I'm interviewing them, they're interviewing me, and it's about that fit and whether we feel like we could work really well together, more so than the specific questions.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really great valid point because I think back to my personal journey. I'm a school teacher by trade, and then I was doing an in-home daycare, but I was not a certified
Mhm.
daycare. But I communicated to parents because I was like, you know what? I'm not doing all the things to my house.
Yeah.
And I was just upfront, like, here's why I'm not doing it. And I was very open and honest in that communication. So I think it is about having those conversations, talking through things and saying, oh, hey, here's who I am, here's my background and experience. And so parents can decide what is valuable and what is a preference and priority for our family, which is really key. But I do think, would you say that the years of experience and certifications drives the different price points and how things, the fees that are associated with some of this?
It definitely does. I will talk a little bit about price just because I know that's a huge question in this area, and it's honestly a very large range. I will say when I started off, I was definitely on the lower end range of that. I would say now the lower end range is probably $30 an hour. It was a little bit more like 25, and you may still find some very new professionals working for 25. But 30 is a little bit closer to the lower end that I'm seeing with newborn care specialists now. And then you can go up towards 40, 45 an hour. And when we're thinking about that, I'm when you're paying for all these certifications, it does add up.
Sure.
And so, you're paying for that extra knowledge that I've continuously been reaching for and putting time investment and money investment into. Plus just that varied experience as it goes on. So it can range, but I would say somewhere between 30 and 45 an hour is most consistent for this area, with maybe a few outliers on either side of that. But that's what you can expect. And do keep in mind that, I am running my business as you do. So there's a lot of behind the scenes expenses that go into that kind of play into that rate along with that experience as well.
Yeah. And so Kelly and I are here in the Raleigh area. So anyone who's listening to this outside of the area, you may want to, find a resource that can help you price out things in that general area where you're located. But I
Yes.
do think, a lot of times it's the years of experience and like the professional development that takes place over time. I do think that's an important question to ask because sometimes being able to keep up, like I think you mentioned this earlier, like what is the new information that we know and we're learning because I think things with children are developing over time. I know in my season as a sleep coach when I first started to where we're at now, like we've learned so much more about brain development. So just realizing that there's updates and understanding the evidence behind that can be really helpful.
Yes, things change so fast. And if you're not doing that continuing education and training and conferences, it's really easy to miss out when you're working, especially nights. If you're not involved, like I'm involved in a lot of mentorship groups and things like that, where we can share the latest updates as well. And so it's really about that with that experience and knowing that with experience, I think we also realize how much we don't know sometimes. So it's and how much we do need to continue to learn, and so you're getting that value as well as someone who I feel like with experience, you become a little bit more flexible and understanding. So that also plays into it.
Yeah, that's for sure. My perspective has really changed over the years. And so it's amazing what time does
Yes.
for learning. Kelly, I wonder if somebody's looking to work with you. I know that you work with families one on one and overnight support. Are there other ways that somebody could work with you, especially if they're maybe not local?
Yes, I definitely have ways that people can reach out to me on the website, schedule virtual consultations. If you're in the Triangle region, I can do in-person consultations also, depending on the scheduling. But virtual consultations, they can sign up right on my website, which is kelset.com. And then I also offer classes, and those can be virtual or in person as well. So I try to schedule out a few virtual classes. I'm working on getting some in-person group classes going, hopefully for new parents and grandparents is my goal. But for the virtual classes, they can look on my calendar and see if I have one scheduled. If I don't, I also will schedule ones if you have a friend group that wants to get together because you're all expecting at the same time and schedule a virtual or an in-person class. I can kind of cater that class to your questions. It'll be the base class that I have. Plus, if you have any specific questions, I try to go over those as well when I'm doing a more personalized class. And then my hope is in the future that I'm going to have some on-demand mini classes available on the website. That's still a work in progress, but hopefully that will be available so that wherever you are, whatever time of day, you can just hop on and purchase one of those little mini classes, and it'll be each subject matter kind of pulled apart so that you can pick and choose the ones that you're struggling with at the moment or they're of interest to you.
Yeah. Kelly, I'll share a link to those in the show notes so parents can take a look at that. You mentioned the grandparents class. Tell me why someone would need that. What does that look like for someone who might be listening to this?
So a lot of times, it seems that there's some conflict there between parents and grandparents because it's time has passed since they've raised their children, and maybe they aren't as up to date because things like we talked about rapidly change. So the grandparents class kind of helps them get up to date on what to expect with the latest in safe sleep, safe car seat usage, feeding trends, basically anything related to the newborn so that they can be more prepared when they go to visit that grandchild and help out. Because a lot of times I'm seeing that because of childcare costs, people are utilizing grandparents when they have the ability to. And so by taking a class for grandparents, I can kind of set them up for success as well and give them tips for navigating that relationship between their adult children and themselves while caring for their grandchildren. And I find that it's a lot easier for that information to come from an outside source so that there's not as much emotion involved in it. So I really want to help grandparents succeed and have that good relationship because I think it's very important for the parents to have that support and for the child to have that good relationship as well. And so we want that village working together. And I feel like having a class that helps them to get up to date on everything is one way that we can make that work well.
Yeah, I definitely see that need. And a lot of times, too, there's like that disconnect, right, between generations. And also sometimes our values and preferences and priorities have changed. And
Yeah.
so recognizing that and like learning maybe how do we have better conversations to build relationships for the
Yes.
child, like for the grandchild and the parents, everybody working together in harmony, which does not always happen, but
Yeah.
could happen.
And I also think, like, if I'm thinking back on it, a lot of times parents are choosing to have their babies a little bit later in life nowadays. It's more common. And so there's a bigger gap from when those grandparents raised children or were around young children. So it's understandable that there's going to be a little bit of differences because, as we said, things have changed so much. So it kind of helps bridge that gap so that it doesn't seem quite as large by getting up to date on it. And it's, also family sizes typically are a little bit smaller. So where, previous generations, maybe there was still a baby in the family all the way along. Now we see that larger gap between when a newborn has been. And we all know that they only stay newborns and infants for a very short amount of time. So it's real easy to kind of mesh those milestones in with older ones. So this kind of helps freshen everything up so that, like you said, we can keep those relationships going well.
Yeah. And Kelly, what ages do you work with from newborn till how old?
Right now I'm working like newborn to 4 months, but it's not that specific all the time. I will work with children up to a year old. Um, Generally speaking, I am there for the a lot of times I'm there the first night baby comes home from the hospital. Sometimes not, sometimes it's a little later. And I'm usually staying anywhere from 8 to 14, 16 weeks. That's kind of the sweet spot for me, but I do also care for older kids. But my focus is really on that fourth trimester.
If someone's asking for help and they're reaching out for a postpartum doula or newborn care specialist, what would you recommend is the timing? Like, when should that person be available?
As soon as possible. I will,
First night? What is your like?
yeah.
What do you find?
Usually for parents that want someone for like significant hours, which is a lot of times that's also a difference with newborn care specialists and postpartum doula. I found is that newborn care specialist contracts tend to be a lot heavier with the hours. So I work a lot more nights as a newborn care specialist for families than I do as a postpartum doula. So for instance, if I have a contract where someone's looking for 4 to 5 nights a week, starting the night the baby comes home from the hospital, I really recommend reaching out. I mean, pretty much as soon as you find out you're pregnant. I actually have a client penciled in right now that's hoping to be pregnant soon. So as soon as we have that, then we'll go ahead and sign that contract. So basically, right now I'm fully booked out. And that has been the case. I would say if you can, at least 3 to 4 months before baby's born, start thinking about that. And I know that's really early and hard to do, but a lot of times when parents wait until the baby's here, we just simply don't have the availability because, as I said, I'm one person. So I can't create extra days on the calendar to help extra people other than doing the consults and the classes, which is beneficial as well. If you can't get that overnight support, that can help you with some tips and tricks to get through those nights. But if you can do it as soon as you find out you're pregnant, start thinking about how much help you want, and reach out. That's the best time because I know a lot of the newborn care specialists that I know are booked out pretty far.
Yeah. It's always interesting. I know for myself, I'd never had anyone who helped me, but I think of how much better outcomes I would have had if I would have had support. And I guess that's my big why as to the work that I do and why this is really valuable and important for parents
Yes.
because it can give us some validation along the way that, you know what, this is just a different season in this fourth trimester.
Yes, very much so.
So, Kelly, I know that you and I could keep talking about all things because we love this season of work. I'd love to connect with you and learn more about your 5 loving lessons that you've been learning along the way. Do you have a favorite product or service that you love?
Well, I mean, obviously a little bit biased, but the classes I feel like are super beneficial for parents. So taking a newborn care class, I think a lot of times people focus on that birthing class, which is great. You want to have that focus and have a plan in place for what you want for the birthing process, but that newborn stage is drastically different than other stages of development. You're experiencing things that don't happen in those later stages, and you're also overwhelmed from the whole birthing process. So I think the any kind of newborn care class that you can take, then that can be very helpful. As far as product, I actually have right here my favorite swaddle. I don't know how well it can be seen here, but is the butterfly swaddle. And I like this swaddle. There are a couple of features that I really like. For one, the material is very soft and it has this silent Velcro material. So you're not ripping Velcro during the night, which is really nice, not just because of the sound, but also because it stays very soft so it doesn't get stiff. It is a two-piece swaddle, so you can use it in a variety of ways. It has these nice little bat wings on it to help keep those hands inside the swaddle, which is also another feature that I like. Plus, any swaddle that I'm looking for and recommending to parents, I really like the double zipper, so you can zip it up or down, because sometimes you want to check that diaper or even change just a simple wet diaper, and you can do that without taking the swaddle fully off, which can be very helpful during the middle of the night. So this is one of my favorite products that I really like, is the butterfly swaddle, just because it works really well. There's a variety of ways to use it, and it's very comfortable.
You first introduced, we were doing a class together and I
Yes.
saw that. I was like, oh, I've not seen that one. And so
Yes.
again, this is where sometimes you work with different people and you learn about
Yes.
different products. So that's why I like to ask these questions. And so we'll share a link down below to
That
the
sounds good.
butterfly swaddle as well. What is your best self-care tip?
So, sort of like all babies are different, I feel like self care is different for everyone as far as what works for them. But you'll probably like this. My one self care tip is to try to prioritize sleep for yourself when you can. Now, I'm not going to say sleep when the baby sleeps, because we all know that's not realistic. But having plans in place, if you have a support system, allowing your support system to help you so that you can prioritize some sleep, is going to make such a huge difference. I was recently talking to a former client who was like, I think our whole experience was completely different than some of my friends because I was well rested. And you can do a whole lot more. You have a whole lot more patience and capacity to think through things when you're well rested. So, whether that means having a friend come over for a few hours and relieve you, hiring a postpartum doula or newborn care specialist, or taking shifts with your spouse or partner, that so that you're prioritizing at least a block of sleep every day, is my number one self-care tip, because it's the thing that I see that makes the biggest difference. And aside from that, just whatever works to make you, put you in your happy place and your calm place, kind of trying to integrate that somehow into your schedule occasionally can make a huge difference too, just so you feel like you're getting a little bit of me time.
Yeah. No, I love that. You're speaking my love language. And yes, sleep is super key in all the things that we are doing. And what is something you never thought you would do or say?
Wake a sleeping baby is probably the one thing, because it's one of those things where, do you wake them, do you not wake them? And a lot of times I do encourage sleep, because sleep begets sleep. So the more we sleep, the better we sleep a lot of times, but there can be too much. And if you have a newborn that's trying to sleep and miss a feed during the day, that's going to backfire on you at night. So I do encourage parents to wake for those feeds during the day. Maybe we let a baby go a little bit extra if we know that they can make that up a little bit later by half an hour or so, but I try not to let it extend too long, because I don't want them to start thinking they want these large blocks of sleep during the day. And I also want them to have the opportunity to feed regularly so that they can sleep better later as well.
Yes. Yeah. That's always a hard one for parents to navigate. And it's like, why would I wake you? Because you're sleeping.
Yes.
So for sure. But good advice. Yeah. Let's get that good sleep in at nighttime and not
Yes.
during the day. And what is the one thing you want parents to really know from our conversation today to be able to take away?
I think I want parents to realize that, like, it's okay to accept help. A lot of times there's a lot of pressure on parents to be the perfect parent, and to do it all themselves, but it's okay. And it's actually beneficial for your baby to have other people in their life and other ways of doing things too. Obviously, you're going to want to have your boundaries in place, and you're going to want to snuggle your baby and do those things, but it is okay to have help so that you can make it through better, this process in a better mental state and more well rested, and to look at the big picture because with all that pressure, I think a lot of times it's the pressure to be perfect and to never do anything that they didn't plan to do. And that's just not how life works. And really, it's more about loving and caring for your kid and the big picture versus those little tiny things that didn't go exactly according to plan during the day. So I think having support there helps with that because, you know, it kind of grounds you a little bit more. You don't get so focused on those every little detail sometimes.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's okay to accept help. That's been a big mantra that I've
Mhm.
had to take in. And for me, I've had to learn to accept imperfect help,
Yes, yes.
and navigating that, especially with relationships with the spouse and things like that. So,
It's always important to recognize that not everyone's going to do it the same way that you do it, and that's okay. Focus on the important things that are safety things, not letting someone fall asleep in the recliner holding your sleeping baby where an accident can happen. We're not going to worry so much if they don't follow the exact routine that you set in place that's 20 steps long. If one thing comes out of order, that's not going to be in the big picture, that's not going to hurt anything. So focus on those important
yeah.
safety measures.
Yeah, I love, focusing on the safety and the health and well-being of the child. And I think too, something that you just said that made me think is like it teaches our little ones flexibility and
Yes.
adaptability. And I know that was something I guess I struggled with as becoming a parent. So these are the skills we get refined in.
Yes. And that's where the perfectionism comes in as well. Like you're not going to
Yeah,
be perfect in showing, yes, your newborn isn't going to necessarily pick up on these things. But over time, when you're practicing that big picture, then when the child makes mistakes later on, it isn't the end of the world to them as much either because they've seen you make mistakes and how you handle it.
yeah, so valid. And what's one thing you've learned in your entrepreneurial journey?
That social media is hard. I already knew that, to be honest with you, but that's not one of my strengths. So there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that you have to do to keep your business going. That's probably not the strength of a lot of us. That our strength is working with babies and families because it's a very different type of job. But the rewards there are great as well because I have my own business. I have a lot of flexibility to help families the way that they need help. And so I have the ability to go in and help in a way that maybe I wouldn't if I was working for a company and not having my own business where they dictated how things were done and how things were scheduled. So I can be very flexible because of having my own business, which I think is very beneficial. And I really like that aspect because I feel like I'm really helping parents more than I would if I was not running my own business. So it's rewarding and it's tough all at the same time.
Yeah. No, and I love that, the big thing that I took away there is like you're capturing those moments with parents in real time. And we can't post that on social media. Like there's just no evidence of that on social media. And I think unfortunately social media does not always portray the reality of parenting or business in any aspect. So very
Very true.
yeah. Well, Kelly, thanks so much for being here with me. And I'm excited for parents to learn more about you. They can check out everything in the show notes. So I'll look forward to connecting with you another time. Take care.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning into today's show. You can see all of the details and show notes below. And as you go out into your day, I hope that you'll make it your mission to be calm, confident, and rested as you lead today. Sweet dreams.